Friends, tonight we're building this total weirdo of a tank, a battering ram on tracks. And look at the sheer size of this lad, absolute unit. Let's drop right in. You'd think a model that's mostly one giant chunk would be quick and easy, right? And honestly, it kinda is. Just glue one extra bit and boom, battering ram complete. Or is it? Alright, check this out. See that sink mark? Oh yeah, it's not just a one-time deal. It goes across the entire roof like it's trying to make a statement. And yeah, it's on the other side too. Symmetry, but make it tragic. Let's kick things off with some good, honest modeling. When I bought this kit, I never imagined this would be the one where I'd end up doing most of the filling and sanding. Like, I thought I was getting a chill build, not a full-blown home renovation project. But wait, there's more. The individual armor plates have these weird, visible steps that make them stand out like bad Lego blocks. Not exactly what I'd call cash money. Also here, because the plate is cut at a different angle, so the apparent thickness of it should be much chunkier. You'll see what I mean in a sec. The thing is, we are basically building up new edges of these steel plates using putty. Yup, that's a lot of filling and we've barely even gotten started. F's in the chat for my sanding block. I remember back when I was just a tiny sprue snipper reading forum posts about how high quality sanders would change your life. Fast forward to today and I'm still rocking cheap manicure sticks and sanding sponges meant for woodworking. No shame though, I just had a nostalgic flashback while I was floating in a majestic cloud of putty dust. But the mission was far from over. More putty was needed on the edges because the steps were really deep in this place, followed by more sanding. Delicate, gentle sanding because, as you know, putty is brittle and has trust issues. Oh, and one last surprise. I spotted a sneaky little gap between the inner structure and the hull. So I bulked it up with some evergreen strips and, you guessed it, more putty. And now, after all that effort, I've managed to lovingly obliterate the few molded details the manufacturer did give us. At last, I feel like a real modeler. Next up, scribing some fresh weld lines. And while I was at it, I figured, why not spice things up a bit? I added some interlocking steel plates to the design. Not just for looks either. This technique was used on every tank beefier than a Panzer IV, so it makes perfect sense here. Now, a lot of the weld beads were already molded in the right spots, but they were so shallow they were basically whispering. So I grabbed my scribing chisel and made them deeper, with the help of a metal edge as a guide, of course. Now check this out. The front plates, which are cut at an angle, now show the proper apparent armor thickness. Will anyone notice? Probably not. Do I care? Yes, that's why I'm pointing it out. I used to be a loyal Tamiya scriber fan, still a great tool, no hate, but over the years I've been converted to these mystery brand chisels from eBay. No corner hole drilling required and you get consistent results just by picking the right width. Metal ruler in one hand, chisel in the other. You do a few passes and then it's time to go full freehand mode and deepen those grooves to your heart's content. Honestly, this is the most fun part of the build. Even though the process is pretty clean, you'll still get some rogue sharp edges, but they're easily tamed. A bit of sanding and a swipe with a hobby blade and boom! Your steel plates look way more natural. For the final cleanup, I always dab a little modeling cement. It melts away the dust and plastic fuzz like magic and leaves you with crisp, glorious weld lines. Suddenly, this ram isn't just a lump of plastic. It's got character. It's got definition. Now let's make it look truly awesome. And by that, of course, I mean it's texture time. We're adding some delicious steel texture using diluted Tamiya putty, a sacred ritual in my armor building process. Seriously, it's mandatory, especially on this thing. The Ram comes with zero surface detail. It's just a bunch of big, smooth plastic slabs, completely lifeless, but that's okay. We just need to bring some energy to these surfaces, some grit, some texture, some soul. This step should be legally required for anyone building this kit. It's even more critical for my build because I'll be doing raw unpainted steel effects in the next video, and those effects thrive on texture. You try hairspray chipping on a flat surface, that's a one-way ticket to Sad Town. Now, while I was in texture mode, I noticed something troubling. The hinges for the axis hatch, yeah, let's just say they weren't exactly designed with immersion in mind. So I took action, decisive, putty-soaked action, and blended them into the surface using a generous helping of undiluted Tamiya putty. Once the putty texture is cured, we go in for the beauty pass. A bit of gentle sanding, or more accurately polishing, to knock down those overly aggressive peaks. You want that imperfectly rolled steel look, not textured ceiling paint look. We started with plastic boredom, and now we're sculpting steel with the power of chemistry and patience. Time to give the Ram some teeth, and by that I mean the absolutely brutal flame cut marks. Now, yes, historically the Germans often machined their armor edges to get that nice, smooth, we have standards finish, but there are examples out there where the cuts are just straight up savage, such as on the Rammtiger. And let's not forget, this vehicle only ever existed on paper, so technically, no one can say these flame cuts didn't look like this. Plus, this thing was designed to be yeeted into buildings and rubble piles, not to win beauty competitions. So yeah, I'm betting elegance wouldn't be the top priority on the assembly line. I was extra careful around the areas built up with putty since it behaves like a completely different species compared to styrene, but honestly, it all went surprisingly smooth. Alright, now that we have carved those deep weld grooves into the model, it's time to fill them back in. For the weld beads, I'm reaching for my trusty sidekick, Tamiya Epoxy Putty Quick Type. Easy to roll into those fine little ropes between two moistened plastic sheets, and it's got just the right amount of tack and firmness to stay where it's supposed to. Now, I know a bunch of you have had issues with epoxy putty. Maybe it won't stick, or you can't get a clean texture. So here's the secret, don't use it while it's moist after you rolled it. You also want to apply it while it's still soft and sticky, and then wait. Once it firms up and stops clinging to everything like a girlfriend with separation anxiety, that's when you start adding texture. Texturing slightly cured putty gives way better results, sharper lines, cleaner welds, and way less frustration. I usually try to cover as much area as possible in one go, and then do the weld texture pass once it's that magical in-between hardening stage. And honestly, that's most of the troubleshooting I've ever had to do. Once you get the hang of it, epoxy welds become one of the most satisfying parts of the whole build. Speaking of having trouble, guess what? We can't attach the door to the hinges because they're already welded in place. But don't worry, I've got a plan. Out with the original plastic rod, drill out those hinge holes, and replace it with a fresh, removable pin made from evergreen profiles. Oh, and those doors, they had a couple of sink marks lurking on the inside. So after sanding, they got the full texturing treatment. Then I bent up some handles from 0.5mm copper wire. Finally, a few mighty fine weld beads later, and the door assembly was looking sharp and ready for action. That wraps up the work on the Ram itself. Let's now roll onto the tank hull and hit it with the same level of love and detail. The hull needed some filling and sanding on the main joints. Nothing too crazy, but enough to make the build the opposite of amusing. There was also this weird cutout for the mudguards, but since those weren't in the kit, I filled them in with plastic and putty. Sink marks. They were lurking on the hull too. I also repeated the scribing and texturing routine here, but kept it focused where it counts. One neat little upgrade I recommend doing on any Tiger model is a bit of extra scribing on the driver's vision port. These parts were movable on the real thing, but kits often dumb them down to the most basic version possible. It doesn't take much time, just a little patience and care. And of course, the weld grooves were also filled with that sweet Tamiya weld texture. Okay, so quick flashback. I built a Ferdinand last summer, which shares the same hull and suspension. And oh boy, did I forget how much of a pain in the plastic it was to put it together. Let's just say there was a lot of scraping, sanding, and why does this even exist moments on these suspension units. Add in the fact that they have all kinds of weird, intricate shapes designed to test your patience, and you've got a recipe for fun, if your idea of fun is slowly losing your mind. Here's a PSA, especially to future me if I ever decide to build the elephant. You don't have to sand and scrape the entire suspension. Only the top parts are actually visible. The rest is hidden behind the wheels. Thank me later. Also, the suspension itself, flimsy AF. Like, it basically falls apart if you look at it funny. So I've made an executive decision. Glued the wheels to the bogies, then dry fitted those onto the hull for painting. Saves a ton of headaches and keeps everything manageable. Moving on, let's talk tracks. I'm assembling these awesome 3D printed beauties from Werk. Big thanks for sending these my way as a gift, by the way. I couldn't use them on my Ferdinand though, because these are the elephant version tracks, featuring ice cleats and guide horns on every other link. Honestly, they were one of the reasons I decided to build the Rammtiger. Because hey, if Porsche was gonna slap a battering ram on the Tiger, why wouldn't they upgrade the tracks too? Assembly of the tracks, chill, quick, simple, clean, just pure modeling bliss. And the level of detail, jaw-dropping every single time I work with them. Well, maybe too chill. I didn't realize there were two different types of links. After assembling a full length with guide horns, I opened the other bag only to discover links without horns. I know, cue facepalm. Luckily, I managed to carefully disassemble the whole thing and rebuild it properly. Took me a full day thanks to my brain fart, but hey, at least I didn't have to buy a second set and wait who knows how long for shipping. Alright, for the finishing touches, because every model deserves a little extra love. I added a few plastic pins for the hinges, because apparently amusing hobby stands for simplified hobby. Hinges with pins? That's not amusing. To balance that out, I threw in some oversized bolt heads on the inner structure. Why? Because I'm pretty sure the ram wouldn't just be welded onto the hull or held there by gravity. There had to be some way to remove it, otherwise good luck getting that engine out for maintenance. Oh, and the access hatch, it's perched pretty high off the ground, so naturally it needed a ladder. I bent those individual steps from copper wire and popped them into drilled out holes. Easy, sturdy, and actually looks pretty legit. And you know what? While doing all of this, it hit me. The Rammtiger could totally pass as a heavily armored APC. Seriously, imagine this beast rolling through the battlefield, carrying troops under all of that armor. Pretty cool, right? Anyway, my friends, this one was a quicker and simpler video because even though the Rammtiger is absolutely massive, it's surprisingly straightforward when you break it down. Simple, however, doesn't mean fast. Big models like this demand big time investments. No shortcuts allowed. As I was working on it, I kept thinking this might be one of the dumbest subjects I've ever built. But honestly, I think that raw steel paint job I'm planning will make all the headaches totally worth it. Now, I won't pretend the majority of these techniques I showed here are brand new. Most of you have seen them before on the channel. But a detailed recap never hurts, especially since after this, we might take a break from tank builds for a while. My next projects are gonna lean away from tanks, but they'll be huge, heavy, awesome, and have lots of big wheels. Let's be real, the model wasn't amusing any more than the Ferdinand was. I'm starting to suspect that Amusing Hobby might be poking fun at us with their whole line of these Porsche Tiger related kits. If I ever build another tank on this chassis, it'll probably be the Tamiya Elephant or one of those old Dragon kits from eBay. And hey, thanks so much for watching. Seriously, because if it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here either. Being able to make these videos full-time is mostly thanks to my incredible patrons, because YouTube loves to remind me that, hey Martin, remember those views and revenue you used to pull 2 years ago? Not anymore, buddy. So Patreon is my safety net, my steady income. It's like a night shift magazine subscription. I post there pretty often with updates from my workbench, sharing thoughts and insights. We can chat through DMs, comments and emails. Patrons get early ad-free videos that stay there forever, so you can rewatch anytime. Plus, I toss in extra goodies like 3D models for detailing on your own projects, tons of real-life references of nature and old buildings, even the odd vehicle every now and then, and high-res studio photos showing the model in way more detail than video ever could. It's appreciated, but never expected. I haven't painted a raw steel finish in over a decade, so I'm pretty pumped to see how it turns out. This one's gonna be another factory fresh look, but this time so fresh without even the coat of oxide primer. Thank you all so much for watching, I love you, and seriously, build your models. Don't just hoard them in your stash. Cheers!